One of my fears is not just being like sexually assaulted. Like, I think that's a fear of all women. That's not to say that all men are bad or all men are sexually assaulted. I just think that's a fear that a lot of women do have. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, a lot of women have experienced some sort of assault at some point in their lives. So it's a lot of fear that women do have. Doesn't mean I walk around terrified. It's just, you know, it's there. But it's a fear of mine. But like, I think on top of that fear, like the biggest fear is like being assaulted like in a public space, like on a metro, which I think actually has happened. And everyone just watches and no one helps, and everyone just hears my screams and just watches. And then when my assaulter is done with my body, he just gets up and walks away, and everyone just like looks at me and then turns away. And as I cry and I scream, everyone just doesn't care. Like, there's this apathy, there's this lack of care. And not only is there a lack of care if I get up bloody and bruised, that everyone would point fingers and laugh at me and call me the whore or say that I'm lying. I think that when people say like the worst thing when you're sexually assaulted is then someone not believing you is almost worse than the assault or being assaulted, is really true as somebody who's been sexually molested and was not believed, and was my abuser was allowed to be around me again, to do it again. It's like the worst feeling in the world, and I don't wish it on my worst enemy. So when I see massive amounts of people on the internet, and I'm actually hoping that they're all bots, I really do, because that would put faith back into humanity for me. But when I see massive amounts of people's on Twitter, on internet, on the socials, people tweeting, trying to deny the sexual assault and the rape that these women of Israel, who was captured and taken hostage and beaten and battered by terrorist Hamas. I feel like it's one of the most disgusting things you can do, and I couldn't imagine being those women. And hopefully they're just shielded from it and they're surrounded by people who love them. But to see the radical progressive far left and the radical alt far right scramble and try their hardest to disprove that these girls were raped, when they're literally coming out and telling you there's testimonies, when there's video, when there's footage coming out of girls with their clothes ripped off and bloodied.
I'm ashamed as a woman that girls can have their bodies used as battlefields. I'm ashamed as a human being that we ignore their cries for help. Instead of denying responsibility, they boasted online of their ambition to destroy. Are these victims not worth the effort? Do the perpetrators deserve to be protected? They are a terrorist group supposedly reviled by all. Teenage girls are being in the street in front of their family. For too long, we have watched as perpetrators of mass human rights abuses have murdered, tortured, and raped without consequence. The perpetrators commit these crimes believing they will get away with it, and they have been right. I'm ashamed that there is no system of justice to respond to mass rape and mass slaughter.
They want to strip any empathy and humanity away from Israel, and the far left is willing to lie, just like the far right is willing to lie. They're both willing to lie to push a narrative and a propaganda. There was this UN document that was going around on X, and they were literally spreading a lie. They took the UN document and they edited it and they doctored it and they spreaded it, and it went viral like wildfire, getting hundreds and thousands of likes, saying that the UN said there's absolutely no evidence of any sexual assault at all. It's not what the UN statement said. I think they literally said there was actual evidence of assault. However, there was no evidence of Hamas directing the terrorists to do mass sexual assault or something like that. I'm like not quoting it directly, but of course I will put it on a screen so you can see it for yourself.
Another finding, we also found that there are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, occurred during the 7th of October attacks in at least 3 locations, namely the Nova Music Festival site and its surroundings, Road 232, and Kibbutz Reim. And in most of these incidents, victims were first subjected to rape and then killed. And at least 2 incidents relate to the rape of women's corpses. And as you know, the Nova Music Festival we found was a site of grave violations, including brutal mass murders, with several hundreds of bodies recovered from the site, in addition to many abductions. Bodies were also found with extensive burn damage. Then a third set of findings is that across multiple locations, we found a recurring pattern of victims found fully or partially undressed, bound and shot. And we found that although circumstantial, such a pattern may be indicative of some forms of sexual violence, including sexualized torture, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment.
But the lie is what went viral. That is what spread like wildfire. Again, the progressive left, the far progressive left, just like the far right, they're willing to lie. I just couldn't imagine going through something like that, being ripped from my home, being assaulted, and then for not only people in America cheer for your death and cheer for your assault and you being taken hostages.
And that we stand with the Palestinian resistance and their heroic and brave action on October 7th. And they said, long live October 7th.
Call you a liar and basically spit in your face.
פתחתי את העיניים פעמיים. הייתה פעם אחת שאחד החוטפים הסתכל עליי, ודאג שאני אראה אותו, אומר לי, Welcome to Gaza. ומושכים לי את השיער ונותנים לי אגרופים בראש. אין שום כלי שיכול להכין אותך לזה שאת כזאת חסרת אונים. אין שום כלי. ואז הפעם השנייה שאני מרימה את הראש, אז אני רואה את עזה. כל העיר שמחה. השמחה לרוע. השמחה לדם, השמחה הזאת שהם הצליחו להשיג שלל מאוד גדול. בעצם שלל. דלת של האוטו נפתחה באמצע הרחוב, באמצע הכביש, באמצע ההמון, ואני כבר מתחילה לחטוף מכות. אנחנו מגיעים לבית, מושיבים אותי על הרצפה, ושולפים ממני את הסדין, ואז את רואה 8 גברים ערבים. בשלב הזה אני כבר מרשה לעצמי לבכות, ואז הוא מבקש שנראה לו את כל כולנו, כדי לראות שאין... שתתפשטי.
It's hard for me to talk about. If you think it makes me money, you're wrong, because my channel is shadow banned to oblivion. I'm just used to it. These videos most likely, this video in particular, will most likely get demonetized. But I talk about it because it's important to me. There was a woman who came out with a documentary documenting the sexual violence, the war tactic, or the terrorist tactic from Hamas, which is sexual assault, which is not new. This has been a war tactic or a terrorist tactic from many groups. They did it to the Rohingya tribe in Burma. They've done it throughout history. Anyway, there was a documentary documenting these women's testimonies and their stories. And when they were trying to premiere the documentary or show the documentary in theaters, their documentary was boycotted by pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-women, at this point, protests by probably women and men who will call themselves feminists. But you know, it's MeToo unless you're Israeli. It's MeToo, it's care about women's voices unless you're Israeli, right? In the documentary, it's heartbreaking. I barely can get through it because it's very triggering for me.
Please don't, no, stop. Can you try to describe what happened?
A lot of the bodies were naked, totally.
מה שראיתי שם זה דברים שלא אנושיים.
אנחנו רואים כאן בתמונה אישה שירו בה במפסע.
Over here, and over here, and over here.
Oh my God. They were sent with clear instructions to rape as many, to humiliate as many.
כל עץ ועץ פה ראיתי בחורות קשורות, עם הידיים מכות. הרגליים שלהם היו פתוחות.
He started touching me, and then he dragged me to the bedroom.
הסתכלתי עליו ואמרתי לאמא, הולכים לאנוס אותי עכשיו.
There were 10 men around me. My instinct was just to fight, to do what I can. I was really scared that they're gonna rape me there and that they're gonna drag me through Gaza streets and parade my body around. I feared that more than being killed. I was chained for 3 weeks in Gaza. I was kept in a really dark room without being able to move. His name was Muhammad. He untied me. I knew that he's up to something. I knew that something bad is gonna happen. I remember thinking, how can I avoid that? There's nothing I can do.
Yeah. You have Brianna Joy, who also spreaded that misinformation, a journalist, mind you, who was recently fired from The Hill. The fact that the left is trying to bend over backwards and literally paint Hamas as these beautiful people who love children and protect their women and all this stuff, where Hamas terrorist groups have been paid by Iran and they've have alignments with a lot of ISIS jihadists, like other radical Muslim groups, and all of these people have been alleged to have assaulted Muslim women, like Muslim women who have talked about their assault, being raped. Some of these women being arrested and being raped before they are murdered or assassinated, because you can't murder or assassinate like a virgin or something like that. So they'll force marry these girls and then rape them and then kill them. The women, the people from their own these cultures that you are caping for, that the Hamas and the radical right and people like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens at this point is caping for and trying to protect and divert your attention and distract you of the scary Jews. The same people that come from these cultures are telling you that they're terrorists and that they terrorize their own people, that they assault and rape their own women, that they marry little girls. They're literally telling you out of their own mouths.
I am Syrian Lebanese. I'm also a German citizen. I'm one of many millions who had to leave the Middle East. I'm one of the few who still remember why we had to leave. Life was hell, and it still is for the majority of people in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Iran, thanks to the Iranian regime and its allies and proxies. The Iranian regime, you claim, has the right to defend itself. Its proxies, such as Hamas, that you are championing on the streets in the West. Have you ever wondered why we haven't seen mass pro-Palestine protests in the Middle East? See, in the West, you are privileged. You can demand even without understanding. Back where I come from, we don't demand. We are grateful if we find the means to feed our children, to pay the rent, to buy our medication. We are thankful if we're not arrested, tortured, and raped. You should know that you are supporting our oppressors, that you are betraying us, all of us, the Gazans included.
But you refuse to believe them, and they're literally telling you out of your mouth. People, they're literally refusing to believe the Hamas terrorists themselves who admitted to raping these girls, to raping Israeli girls, to assaulting them. Out of their own mouths. They believe, they're pro-Hamas, but they refuse to believe Hamas when they tell you what they did, and they refuse to believe Hamas when they filmed it and documented their actions. They refuse to believe the group that they're protecting. Very confusing. But they also refuse to believe the women and the men who've come forward and said, this is what they do, and they're caping for them. But somehow, the same people, again, who would assault their own women, marry their little girls, and brutalize their own community, is just, they will never assault Israeli people that they ripped from their homes through terror and held hostage for 8 months. No, and counting. No, they would never do that. There's no evidence, there's no past history of those types of actions.
I believe the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, married Aisha at 6 and he consummated the marriage at 9. I have zero problem with that at all.
Habibi, let me tell you something in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as sin is concerned, yeah? The one that sells drug, good or bad? Just very quickly, good or bad? Bad. How about the murderer? How about the one who commits adultery, zina? What about the one who rapes a child? What about the one who drinks alcohol? What about the one who does the biggest of the kabair, good or bad? This person, one person that commits all of these sins, he commits all of these sins on a daily basis, but he prays, is better in the eyes of Allah than the one that doesn't commit any of these sins but doesn't pray.
No, we don't think there's any problem with it at all. We think that it's just because we have a different idea of what it means to be a child, which can be tracked historically. But now, if the situation has changed, we'd say that the general principle in Islam is, you can do what you kind of want, so long as, I'm not going to say you can do what you want so long as you harm it. You can marry whomever you want to marry, so long as it doesn't cause them harm, physical. We would say that, well, if you were to be intimate with a 14-year-old or 13-year-old who's got huge hips and huge breasts and huge body, I mean, quite frankly, we would say it's not going to have the same effect medically. I mean, no one can make the argument.
It's insane to me how it's just really sad. It's really sad to see this happen. It's really sad. And the thing is, they don't care about Palestine because they don't care about Palestinian women or children. They don't care about Muslim women and children because, again, Muslim women and children has been screaming for freedom and help for decades, and the progressive left has ignored them. They don't care about them. They just care about this weird death cult ideology they decided to adopt. And because they hate Jewish people, they hate the Jewish community, they hate Israel. They don't actually care about the country, because if they did, why didn't they ever listen to their screams for help years ago? And when this gets resolved, and it will eventually get resolved, will they continue their humanitarian care for these women, for these children, or will they go on to the next thing? I think history tells us they would just go on to the next thing, right? The girls in Afghan crying for help. Crying for help, no one cares.
What the Taliban are doing in Afghanistan is a systematic oppression of women and girls in Afghanistan. As you rightly said, from banning them to even see a doctor or visit a park or go to a salon, attend a school, be in politics. And this is the thing we need to note down, that the life of Afghan women before the Taliban take over was not like this. These women were in politics, they were in professions, they were dentists, they were journalists, they were football players, they were part of a robotics team, they were in school. And of course, there were challenges, but the Taliban have made things a lot worse for women and girls there. And here's what is important for us to recognize, that this is a systematic oppression. Afghan women rights activists are calling it a gender apartheid.
Same sort of religion, same sort of community. You don't see a bunch of feminists in unis saying, hey, we need to listen to the Afghan girls. Nobody cares. It just boggles my mind how hard they are trying to make this not a thing, the assault that these women went through not a thing, because again, to rip empathy and humanity from Israelis because they hate Jewish people, and it's so a way to cope with their own alignment with a terrorist group when it doesn't match up with anything else they say they stand for, which is women, which is consent, which is freedom, right? That's what they say they stand for. So it doesn't really match what they're aligning with themselves now, so they have to tell themselves what those things just aren't true.
All the filthy, disgusting lies that the Israelis told after October the 7th.
Like what?
About burning babies and women being raped, which were all completely...
Actually, women were raped.
No, they weren't.
Yes, they were.
Well, there's no evidence.
It's been established by the United Nations.
You can say anything that you want, but there's no evidence.
But actually, there is extensive evidence.
There is no evidence.
Sexual assault and rape. Well, there is.
Okay, well, all right, now...
Also, we know what Hamas broadcast on social media.
Calm down. Roger, calm down. Don't sink to his level. All right, I won't.
What level?
Well, stop shouting. Stop shouting back. Let him interrupt you as much as you want. Okay, all right. Sorry, Piers, what were you saying?
Yep. Anyway, that's it. It was hard for me to make this video. I almost didn't want to make it because it's hard for me to talk about these things. It really is. But I feel like someone needs to talk about it because no one's really talking about it, even though I'm most likely get demonetized. So if you really want this video to make its rounds through the algorithm, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you want to support this channel, you can donate. My PayPal and Cash App link is in the comment section down below, or you can super thanks. And you guys have an amazing, beautiful day. Bye.